Welcome to the X Podcast. We're so glad to have you back. Today is a special episode. I'm actually alone here with my good friend, Greg Ford. How are you doing, brother?
Hey, great, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on our podcast. Normally, Russ is on here with me, and he is stuck in South Africa and can't get home.
What part of South Africa?
Johannesburg was the last I heard.
Nice.
So I don't know. All I know was he was supposed to be back. He can't get back. His flights are a mess. He's stuck over there. And
sounds like a cheap excuse to me.
It does. It does. So
where there's a will, there's a way.
I might need a new co-host. So maybe if you want to join me for good, you can do that.
Where
but
do I apply?
Yeah, he wish he could be here. But anyways, I'm glad to have you on. Greg's a friend of mine, actually, for a long time. We've kind of been, what would you say, co-laborers in kind of the ministry and what we do. He leads one church in Gahanna. Would you say Gahanna? Columbus? What would you guys?
Yeah.
Just Columbus. That's what we say.
Gahanna, Columbus.
I'm in Canal Winchester, but nobody knows where it is, so I just say Columbus, Ohio. A dynamic church, incredible pastor, incredible leader. I've been able to, I don't know if you ever remember this. One of the first time I ever met you. You probably won't remember this. Oh my gosh, this was a long time ago. Me and one of my staff members went on a Sunday to visit you when you guys were meeting in a school.
Yeah.
It's funny, you're still meeting in school.
Yeah.
But do you remember those days when you were back meeting in a school?
Oh, yeah.
And so we went and actually visited you when you were meeting in the school. And so I've had an opportunity just to kind of watch what God has done through your church and through you and your ministry. It's pretty awesome.
Thanks, man.
What's happened.
Likewise. And, this incredible facility and, the way you've led the way.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I don't know who all will listen to this. I'm sure some of the people that attend your church and then others that don't. But the guy who is leading this podcast in this church is the kind of guy who out of the blue will just text or call a co-laborer in the city and just with a word of encouragement or a prayer.
Yeah.
And you got a million things on your mind with your own church and your own family and everything going on. And it seems like, Tim, every time you do that, it's like exactly when I need it.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm, obviously you're doing your thing.
Yeah.
But the fact that you care about other people other than just yourself or people who can benefit you says a lot about you, man. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, I pray for you and your church. I've had this thing for years that I don't know, God laid on my heart a long time ago. I just pray for, I have a drive-in on every Sunday. And so part of my drive-in is I pray for all the pastors that I know in the city and their churches. And so I pray for you on a regular basis and love what God's doing.
Thank you.
And I have known several of your staff members and just, you've got a great work going on there. And so I just thought it would be cool to have you on here. But I like you as a person. Like you're a fun guy. You have a lot of crazy sides to you. And so let me just, before we dive into maybe just some conversation about what's going on in the world, what's going on in your life, what's going on in leadership, I wanted to maybe introduce you to a few folks. And so maybe say just for a moment a little bit about your family. Why don't you just describe your family? They're incredible. So
Yeah. So my wife Shayla and I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
So daughter Ella is the oldest.
Yeah.
She's 13. And
teenage years.
Which honestly,
how's it going?
I ain't even worried about it, dude.
Yeah.
Honestly, like Ella and I, she's so smart, and like our conversations, we're tight. We are super tight.
That's
so
cool.
I mean, I'm sure she's gonna make mistakes. I'm not worried about that, but I just don't worry about losing a relationship with her.
Yeah.
We're super tight.
That's cool.
And then I have 2 sons, and they're both on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
So our son Hudson is 10. Our son Miles is 6. And people ask about, like, well, where are they on the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like a scale of 1 to 10. It's not like he's like a 6.
Yeah.
They give you an IEP, which is basically a little novel about how your kid's doing socially, and then, his ability to do math and schoolwork and all communication and all of those kind of things. So our middle son, who's 10, he's a little more severe. And Miles, our younger, is a little less severe, but they're both pretty obviously on there. So that's where we're at.
What was it like when you guys first discovered this? I assume you discovered this with your middle son.
Yeah.
First.
Yes.
Obviously, and what went through your mind? Because I'm sure there are people who listen or watch this that maybe they got their own kind of personal family dynamic and some challenges with their kids and things like that. What went through your mind? What's it been like to try to be a dad in this?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for asking, dude.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Honestly, it blindsided me. Like I knew something wasn't right, and I, people often mean well, so they would say, well, he's just a boy. Boys are different than girls. You can't compare him to Ella because our daughter was very verbal very early. and he wasn't trying to talk, and he wasn't doing, he wasn't social at all. People would come over to our house. He would cling to my wife's leg and cry. So people go, oh, sometimes that happens. But I felt like something was wrong. And so I started kind of reading up on it. And by the time he was about 4, wasn't trying to talk, wasn't potty training or even close. And when he was diagnosed, I actually had a measure of peace because I'm like, okay, at least we know what's up. Like, I'm tired of fighting blindfolded. At least like I know, who we need help from and whatever. So I had actually a guy in our church who has an adult son with autism, and he said, Greg, you need to mourn the son you thought you were going to have, because when you imagine having a son, you were thinking like you and your dad. You were thinking like, oh, we're going to play ball and we're going to, like be yelling at the TV together at the Buckeye game and, all this. And that's not my relationship with my son, No. So he's like, you need to mourn that. And I would have never thought to do that, but that was really good advice.
That is good advice.
So I did. I kind of went through a process of mourning, and we thought we were done having kids. And then my wife gets pregnant again, before we'd done all the official stuff to make sure we couldn't. And so then
surprise.
So then we find out we're having a boy. And then I thought, oh, that's kind of cool because, we'll circle the wagons around Hudson. We'll help him out. And now we're going to have, it was almost like that dream was resurrected.
That makes sense.
And then, there is, stats around if you have one child with autism, you're like, I think it's 30% more likely to have a second or something like that. And I knew that. But
do they feel like it's a genetic thing? I mean,
that's a long. I mean, I think it probably has a component to that.
Okay.
I mean, some people think it has something to do with vaccines or has to do with food or gut. Like, there's a lot linked to the gut. So the bottom line is it's not conclusive. Like, we don't really know. It's probably some sort of combination.
Yeah.
There's some catalyst out there because of just the spike in numbers.
Yeah.
Like when you and I were kids.
Do you think it's a spike in numbers, or we are now aware? I wonder. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess the data analytics around that is probably a bit of both. I mean, I don't know it real well, but I would say there were probably people we grew up with that we knew were a little different socially that probably were somewhere on the spectrum that never were diagnosed. But I think the numbers are pretty huge. I mean, it was whatever 1 in some 1,000 when we were kids, and now it's 1 in something like 48 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really,
it does seem more prevalent.
100%.
Yeah.
Everyone knows someone, whether it's in their own family or a friend. Like and growing up, I didn't know anyone who had autism.
I don't think I did either.
Anyone.
And that is interesting because I feel like today you can't almost grow up without knowing someone, and not just online or social media, but I think like either your family or your circle.
Which, by the way, I do feel a bit fortunate that's kind of, in a sense, like my sons are a little more understood than they would have been 20 years ago. Like, if we're at a park and my son is sort of being who he is, people don't just think he's weird. They recognize, oh, something's up there. Yeah. And I think it's just
a little bit more grace, maybe.
Yeah, a lot more grace. That's cool. Like, and I appreciate that. And schools are more equipped than they used to be, and
that's true.
All of that. So anyway, when we found out about that probability or likelihood, I don't tend to worry. I was like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. And then pretty soon my second son started to have a lot of the same, very similar things. So then we found out, he was on as well. And that one hit me harder. That one was like a major blow, because I almost felt like the first time I mourned and grieved and rebounded, and then it was resurrected.
You thought,
And it was like, I didn't even ask for another son. And then now I've got to grieve all over again. And so it was funny because my first son, my wife was in the valley of despair, and I was doing great. And then we inverted. And with our second, she was doing great, and I was like just angry. I wasn't even angry at God. I wasn't angry at anybody. I was just angry because I was kind of wounded, And so I had to kind of figure that out. And I hate being sad, dude. Yeah. I hate being sad. I'll avoid sadness.
You always seem like the kind of person that you always are just happy, positive, dude. Excited. Let's go.
I want to have fun. Like, I'm a fun-loving dude. Like, I don't like being sad. So, but I had to kind of walk that through in a healthy way. Otherwise, it was going to come out sideways. It was starting to. So I think it's so true just in general. It's one of the things I've talked a lot about on this podcast, just kind of my journey to understanding emotional health. And I think we all go through different things, but I think I would imagine you look at even that journey helps shape not only who you are, but who you are as a leader. Like, you're probably a much better pastor having gone through that. Like, there's things, you know what I mean? I've gone through and stuff that I'm like,
I see
Massive.
people differently now.
Yep.
I have empathy that I didn't have before. I can, you know what I mean? Like I can, like when somebody in their family's going through something, that there's a way that you can connect because you connect with your weakness and your pain, and so that's, I mean, that's pretty significant.
It deepens you. It
Yeah.
really does, because even in what we do theologically, we do, in terms of as church, we know in a sense it's eternal and it's deep and it's whatever, but it can become shallow.
Yeah.
It definitely can become
Yeah.
shallow. It can become a stage and a speaker and a music set and whatever. And when you have something hit you right between the eyes and like rip your heart out, it really does like deepen you, that you're asking questions of God.
Yeah.
You're going into zones that you really don't want to go in, but something's happening in that process if you'll let it.
Yeah.
And it has a lot to do with the decisions you make around what am I going to make of this?
Yeah.
Am I going to stick my head in the sand? Am I going to be in denial? Am I going to get angry and bitter, or am I going to see this as an opportunity in a fellowship of suffering?
Yeah.
To actually becoming more like Christ and seeing things, myself, people, situations differently.
That's so incredible. And so you got a family, a wife, 3 kids, but let's talk about Mrs. World.
Yeah.
So your wife, I mean, that's kind of crazy. I don't know if you think it's crazy, maybe not.
It's pretty crazy.
But your wife, I remember I texted you back last fall, and you were, I think, at Vegas at the time because she was doing Mrs. America, not Miss. Let's not confuse the two.
Correct.
She is married to you.
That R is very
Mrs. America, and she won. I was like, dang, that's incredible. And then I learned recently she won Mrs. World.
Yeah.
So, like, what does it mean to be like Mr. World? Oh, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. You wouldn't be. That's
Not at
Arnold's
all.
title.
I'm
Hold
not
on.
even-
You
I'm
are
not
the
even close.
Mr. First. What is it called? Mrs. World.
The
What?
first husband.
The first husband to Mrs. World. What is that? What was that like? Like, I mean, she used to. I think I remember you telling me that years ago. She used to do pageant stuff before.
Yeah.
How in the world do you,
Yeah.
grown, have kids, go? I think I want to compete.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. So here's what's crazy.
I've got to hear this.
Yeah. All right. So when she was single, right, she was like in pageantry and whatever, and
Okay.
did really well and won a lot of stuff and all that. So we get married, and in 2014, she came to me and was like, "Hey, there's a Mrs. thing, right? So they do the same thing for single women they do for married women." She's like, "What would you think if I did it?" I was like, "Well, dude, I'm here for you. Like, you've done nothing but support me. I want to do whatever you want." And so she did it. So she won Mrs. Ohio in 2014, and she goes to Mrs. America. Well, she got pregnant with my son Miles.
Oh.
Before so when she went to Mrs. America in 2014, she was 18 weeks pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So that affects, essentially your presentation, right?
Yeah.
So she didn't even tell anyone, but you kind of tell, like, she was a little pregnant. So anyway, she went through, actually
baby
was
bump.
she made the top 15, all this. And if you know my wife is competitive, but she's a weird kind of competitive. She doesn't want anyone to lose. She wants to win, but she doesn't want anyone else to lose. I'm the opposite. Like, I want to win, and I want
beat
other
you.
people to
I
lose.
want to beat you.
Yes, dude.
Yes.
Okay, like, and I
Yes.
want you to know it.
Yeah.
Okay. She is not that way at all. Like, but she does love to win.
Yeah.
So she would kind of over the years, like, man, I don't mind losing, but I just wish I could have done my best, whatever. So I was like, hey, look, if you ever want to do it again, then do it again. So she actually turns 38. She doesn't mind me telling her age. She turns 38.
Well, when you win Mrs. World, you probably aren't too worried about it. You're like, yeah, I won that, and I'm this age.
So she turns 38 actually Saturday.
Wow.
This Saturday. So
Well, happy
she's
birthday.
37. Okay. And she's like, it's kind of now or never.
Yeah.
So she just decided, like, I'm going to get at my absolute best. So she hired a trainer. She, did this certain diet routine and all this.
sure.
And then honestly, man, between 2014 and now, the amount of work that she has done on herself in terms of her own mind, like even this journey with our boys that we mentioned earlier, even COVID, like a lot of the things that it just forced her to address some things in her life, some deep things that she had been avoiding, that put her in an unbelievable headspace, like more healthy than she's ever been.
That's cool.
So she goes, hey, I'm going to go for this. So she goes.
When did she decide she was going to go for it? It was originally
About a year
2014,
ago.
so about a year ago.
Yeah, about a year ago.
So there was about a 6-year
Yeah.
gap, 7-year gap
Yeah,
almost.
yeah.
Six
And it was
year
kind of
gap.
like, hey, it's now or never. I'm
Yeah.
37, like, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of the window in the Mrs. world. Like they're usually like 35 to 40 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so anyway, so she's like, it's now or never. I'm going to do it. Cool. So she goes, wins Ohio, goes to America in Vegas, you know. And again,
Yeah.
it's kind of weird because you're there against 50 people, right? So you're kind of in there like,
What are
it was
your
like me and
chances?
my
You got a
daughter-
1 in 50, right?
My
You're like,
father-in-law.
Yeah.
We're cheering her, you know. But she wins, you know, and it was like, it's hard for me to know because I wasn't surprised, but it was also like, I'm far from objective, right? It's like I think she's the best person in the world.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm like, I think she should win, but whatever, you know. And she goes through and she wins, which I was like, super. I wouldn't even say proud of her because I'm already proud of her. I don't need anything else to be more proud. I was happy for her.
Yeah,
you
that
know?
makes sense.
So then she goes to the world, which is like it's like 50 some countries, people from everywhere, Sri Lanka, United Arab Emirates, Jordan. Actually, dude, you know what's funny? So the woman that won runner up is the wife of Scott Stapp from Creed.
Are you
I
serious?
swear.
Oh my
He's sitting in the row in front of me, dude.
That's
Scott,
funny.
Scott Stapp. So anyway, she's from Jordan, the
Yeah.
nation of Jordan. So anyway, all over the world, and again, you just have no idea, and she just kept
she won
making
that.
it through, and she won, and
That's
so
crazy.
I'm pumped for her because
Yeah.
honestly, so my wife's an Enneagram 5. My wife is really smart.
Wow.
She
Is she an introvert? Usually 5s are. I'm just curious.
She is naturally more of an introvert. She's a homebody. Like if you leave her alone, she likes to put in a podcast or a book in her ear
Yep.
and work around the house and like. But she is so smart and has so many great thoughts that the thing she's most excited about actually is doing podcasts. She's getting all these podcast opportunities to talk about
whatever.
Yeah.
Platform.
And that platform. So it's opening some cool
Dang,
doors.
why
for
didn't
her.
I have her on
You
here
should.
instead
You
of you?
should. You
All
should.
right, maybe we could have her back.
You should.
I would love to hear more about the
it would be
story and what's pick her
100%.
brain. That's
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty
Talk to her
incredible.
about sharks.
Huh?
Talk to her about sharks.
love sharks.
It's like she's gone free diving.
Okay.
In the ocean, no cage.
I don't know if I love them that
Facts.
much, but I do love. I mean, I like anything in the wild that could kill you. I run after them.
You need to
So
have her on.
I might do it. Like
You need to have her
like
on your
there's
podcast.
been times we were driving through the hills of Tennessee and a bear runs across it, and I was like, hit the brakes, and I'm running after it with my phone trying to get his picture. Like I chased it.
I'm scared of ferrets. Dude.
Oh,
I'm scared of.
I got my picture one time in front of about a 6 or 7 foot gator. I was in Florida, and they were, we were at a golf course, and it was sunning itself on the side. I told my buddy, I was like, I've got to get a picture with it. And at that time it was camera. And so I got to probably about 10 or 15 feet from it, maybe a little bit less than that. I turned my back to it, squatted down, I said, take my picture. And my friend who lives in Florida, he was like, you're an idiot. I was like, man, I know, just run in a serpentine. It'll never catch me. Those things will catch you. But I love like the thrill of wild animals
You need to
and
have Shaylin
chasing.
on
So
here.
we'll have Shaylin
If
on
I
here.
see a
If
duck-billed
she-
platypus, I won't get out of the car. I won't get out of the car.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I think I like your wife already.
Yeah, she's
but
great.
No, that's cool. And so you love a lot of things. We'll get into a couple just cultural things because I love to hear. One of the things we love to do is we love to add other voices to this. We love to get into conversations about different things and what's going on. But you are a huge Buckeye fan, so
Big time.
that big time and football, right?
Oh yeah.
Huge. So how are they going to be this year?
Buckeyes?
How are they going to do?
Oh, I think they're going to be really good.
What's the prediction? Are they going to make the playoffs?
Yeah.
They're going to make the
Oh,
playoffs.
definitely. Definitely.
Are we going to have a Heisman winner on the team? I mean, we have the potential.
Heisman's always tough to pick because
I know.
every time it's like the preseason favorite, I feel like almost never wins.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to feel great about CJ Stroud.
Oh,
I mean, this
he looked
dude
phenomenal.
He got better every game.
Trevion Henderson.
Trevion Henderson.
I mean, you still
Their
have
lines,
wideouts are great.
Great wideouts.
We just picked up an offensive lineman. Did you hear?
No.
Oh yeah, we just picked up an offensive lineman. I forget. He was, I think, in the transfer portal. That was like stud someplace else. So like
Our line's
we,
still full of maulers.
And we still have. And then here's what I'm excited about. I know people don't like sports too bad. Here's the thing that I love. I actually love that Ryan Day. You want to talk about a leadership decision? I love that he went in. They're perennial at the top. And he goes in and goes, we didn't win the big one. I'm cutting. And he gets rid of Combs. He gets rid of all of these things. And he brings in some offensive line coach, defensive coordinator, all new staff. I'm kind of excited to see what they create.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like even some of the positions that were a little weak last year.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at that linebacker room, it went up.
Did it go? I haven't followed it.
Oh yeah,
Linebacker and defensive backs. Quarterbacks haven't been good.
They have everybody, pretty much everybody back at backer, and then you've got young lions coming in at that position, and then you've got some of these like super highly touted like Jack Sawyer.
Yeah.
And
he actually came on last year.
I mean, these guys are a year in that weight program.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They're going to be.
I need to get in that weight program, man. It bulked me up. I
can't
get
in that weight program.
Yeah. So, anyways, okay. So I want to ask you. Right now, there's obviously a lot going on in our world, and I would love to know, just like when it comes to what's happening across the globe right now in Russia and Ukraine, and that's a topic that we're going to dive into on this podcast. Probably do a few episodes and just kind of walk through it a little bit. What's going on? I'd love to know your thoughts. What's been going on in your mind as you kind of watch what's unfolding happen in Ukraine?
Yeah, I think so. As an introduction to my thought, I was listening to something not too long ago. It was from a historian who was talking about. He was predicting 100 years from now. So he said 100 years from now, the story won't be about what we think it's about now. So he said, what we think it's about now is we think it's about politics, or we think it's about social issues, or we think it's about COVID-19. He's like, the story will be about the information age and the transition from the industrial age to the information age, and how we just didn't know how to do that, and how it created so much anxiety. So he compared it to when we went from an agrarian society to an industrial. So you have everything going from agricultural to now people are building factories, and what's going to happen to the farm. And and that was actually when there was prohibition, because it was like whatever it was, 85% of Americans agreed that alcohol should be illegal.
Right.
which
That's
is
funny.
like
That's
why?
funny.
But illegal. Why? But like no matter what you think about alcohol, like we're all probably like it shouldn't be illegal. But 85% of Americans that don't agree on anything agreed on that, because alcohol was such a big coping mechanism for the anxiety and the stress of going from an agrarian society to an industrial. Well, you extrapolate that out to what we have now, for going from industrial to information, to where now you've got one of these and I got one, and everyone does, and Mama has Facebook, and like everybody's on. So with that, it's exponentially more stressful, which is the rise in suicides and the rise in all this.
Sure.
So you look back even at a COVID-19, whatever you think about how that was handled or what that was like, it was obviously highly inflamed by social media. Yeah. The fact that things can actually go viral now, ideas and feelings, and nobody wants to get caught on video, or nobody wants their stuff to get, well, hey, X church, there was a big spread or whatever it might be. It affects everything. So to the war that's starting to go on now, it's going to be very interesting to see. This is the first war that's a leader is leading from Instagram. Zelensky is leading his nation on Instagram. Like,
it's totally
he
changed
was going
the narrative.
Up 1 million followers a day. For a while. Of just people going like, what does this guy have to say? My daughter comes in. My daughter was watching lives from
Zelensky,
Ukraine.
Oh yeah.
Like people in Ukraine going live on stuff going on. So it's not like, the media can't control it. So now with social media, you're going, man, like a guy like a Zelensky becomes, he went from a guy, I kind of knew who Zelensky was, to like the guy I'm most interested to hear what he has to say today. That you can see how volatile the whole situation is in terms of countries going, well, here's the role we want to play or don't want to play. But now Zelensky has become, well, let's look up real quick. Again, and this isn't about, we're not just talking about social influence of, in a petty way in terms of how many followers does someone have, but this is a guy right now that really does have global influence. He's got 16 million people who are watching what he has to say.
They have about 44 million in their entire country. So when you consider the size of that, and it is like I think what you're saying
his influence is global. So if Russia goes in and kills this guy, or again, you're seeing now like guys like the Klitschko brothers, like these are world famous people. They're going fighting for their country,
Yep.
and you start seeing their corpses.
Oh, it's
What
definitely
does
changed
this
the
do?
narrative of what's going on when it comes to conflict.
In terms of volatility.
Yeah.
And then in the just when you look at how it can be somewhat concerning, right? You look and you go, even something like a no-fly zone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I hear that they're, we got to do a no-fly zone. Well, you're committing now to shooting planes out of the sky, which can go nuclear really quickly.
I think that's the big concern that my guess is President Biden has, and all of them. You don't know what you're dealing with Putin, and having his fingers on the and they have quite a nuclear arsenal. And you go nuclear, the world might be over.
Their relationship with China,
as we know it, it's going to be over. But if things go nuclear, that's what's unique, I think, about when you think about World War II, and you think that to me is that's the last almost global conflict where you had multiple nations in there. Oddly enough, Russia was kind of an ally of ours back in World War II, right? But you think back then, the worst thing that could happen did happen, not to us, but what we caused with the atomic weapons, right? Atomic bombs. Today, it's on a different scale, nuclear. And so, and plus you add information to all that. And I mean, sure, it's disconcerting. It's pretty scary. And I think that's why there's probably a lot of hesitation on how far do we get involved in this conflict, because the moment we do, I feel like, and you're probably a little bit younger than I am, but you may remember, like I grew up around the 80s, and like at that time, the Cold War with U.S. and Russia. So anybody that's kind of like grew up around the 80s or before, they have a perspective of Russia that's very different than a younger generation does. And so it feels like there have always been tensions between the U.S. and Russia. It almost feels like Putin's just, I don't want to say he's waiting for an opportunity, because I think he is overestimating what his force can do. I think he's overestimating what he can do. Happens with authoritarian figures. They only have people telling them what they want to hear. They only do what they want to do. And I think he's probably overestimating it. But still, it's scary to think about. It's really scary.
I mean, when you think about why we should pray for our leaders, right? like you go,
tough decision.
You're talking about they're picking the best bad option. So you're going. What is the best bad option? Is the best bad option to have an outmatched Ukraine, try to rally the European Union and to try to get their neighbors to help them, and we stay out of it. We kind of just do a little sanction. How much do you want to poke the bear? Do you want to shoot a missile at the bear? Like, what do you
let's
do?
also be honest. All of NATO has been afraid of Moscow for how long? I mean, Ukraine wanted to be a part of NATO. The reason why NATO didn't let Ukraine in is because they knew what was going to happen with Putin. So if you think about it, NATO has been afraid of this for a long time. And now what you get is you've got other European nations like Estonia and other ones. They're all calling for NATO to step in, like all the nations to step in, no-fly zone, come and help. Because you know what they're looking at? They're looking at, Putin said he was concerned that Ukraine becoming a NATO nation was going to move their enemies right to their border. So what happens when Russia now takes over, if they do take over Ukraine? All those other nations that are right along on the other side of Ukraine, now are they just the next threat? You're in NATO. You know what I mean? I think that's how they see it. They're like, we could be next. And so it's crazy. I mean, I think it's, I don't think we've seen anything quite like this in my lifetime.
Well, and again, you add the fuel of smartphones and how information and imaging comes to us now.
Yeah.
It's a different animal.
Every conflict, I would say most conflicts, because there are other conflicts that have happened around the world that the rest of the world turns a blind eye to. But when it comes to Russia or Europe, they don't. And Ukraine, and it is crazy because, like you said, all eyes are on this now. And I think that draws almost everybody into it somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, with China. And so, I don't know. I'm probably the most, I'm heartbroken for the
really
Ukrainian people, because here they are, and it's clear they're not the aggressor.
Yeah.
They're just trying to live life.
Yeah.
and you get the Russian, just dictator that really comes in. And even what's sad, I was reading over 15,000 Russians have been arrested or detained because they protested the war. You can't say anything negative against it. News stations have been shut down. Social media influencers, they're shutting down, Instagrams. They're shutting down Facebook. They're shutting down all this stuff because they want to control the narrative. And so it's pretty fascinating what's going on. And like you said, though, when have we ever had a front row seat to this, and not through the media?
Yeah.
But like you said, through. And it's crazy that even as we're recording this right now, today was a day when Zelensky was going to address Congress again. And so I haven't really paid attention, but they already were. He was having another address with Congress today. So I don't know what's going to come out of that.
All right, so to get a little biblical, since since we're pastors, right? At some point, so it's funny because I've just been studying John 10, right? And it talks about Jesus about being the good shepherd. So he's using this sheep analogy, right? And he's talking about robbers, like robber leaders, thief leaders versus good shepherd leaders. And he actually is where he says, "I am the gate." And actually in that, it was a very understood connotation that in the wilderness they would set up a perimeter, and then they would have an
opening.
There's
an opening.
Yeah,
and the shepherd would lay in that opening.
Exactly. He would lay in
I'm the gate.
I'm the gate.
Yeah.
So then he would lead. When he would lead the sheep, it was by his voice. That's where he said, "My sheep know my voice." In fact, they would have people that would come in to try to steal sheep thieves. They would come dressed as the shepherd, and even if the shepherd couldn't overpower the thief, just by his voice, the sheep would follow him. So the idea of he's modeling leadership, and he's saying a shepherd leads with his voice, lays himself down, and then he said the fraud leader climbs over the wall. Why? Because I have to drive the sheep with fear. They would scare the sheep to run out of the gate because the sheep won't follow me out of the gate. They only are driven out of the gate with fear. And you're seeing two leaders, one of whom is driving people with fear, and another who is laying at the gate.
Sitting right in the middle of this conflict.
At the gate, right? And why did they lay
I
at the
will
gate?
die. I will go down with this.
They lay at the gate so that if a wolf had to step on them to get to the sheep, and you have a dude who's been offered to be extricated, to be flown out of there, and he said, "No, thanks, the fight's here." I'm,
in the capital city, just sitting right there.
I mean, what an example, honestly.
It's incredible. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal just to see. I think his courage has inspired the world.
It's inspired me. I'll tell you that. I mean, take a look in the mirror. I'm like, man, what would I do? I want to think I do the right thing, but when they're blowing stuff up outside the door,
I think that it's very possible that Putin and his oligarchy. I think that it's just a guess. I think they underestimated what they were going to deal with in Ukraine. I think they thought they were just going to come in, walk right in over them, pull out those people, put their own leaders in. That's what they love to do. I mean, that's what they did back in 1979, okay, over in the Middle East. I mean, this is what Russia, this is what the mentality. We go in, put puppet governments in, we control, the area, and they came and they ran into somebody. They're just like, no, we're fighting. And I think that's almost been the collective voice of the Ukrainian people. I mean, there've been a lot of refugees, and it's sad. Like we've tried to, we've support Convoy of Hope as a church. We set the money. This is going to be and is the worst refugee crisis that we've seen probably since World War II. And maybe even then. I mean, there are upwards of close to 2 million people that have fled the country, and trying to take care of all those people. Like it's just unfathomable what's going on. And I think it's sad because I think we do live a little bit, maybe here in the America and the West too, a little bit of probably an insulated life where we don't expect these kind of things to happen around the world. And when you're seeing it happen, I think it just breaks my heart. I was praying today, and I don't remember to do this all the time, but when I think about that in a moment, I'm like, I want to make sure to pray for him because, again, this is totally unrelated, and we're two pastors, so we can sometimes talk like this, and if you're not a faith person, that's fine. But I just think about, what the Apostle Paul said when he said, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. And I think that there is a component, I'm not saying it like Putin's demon-possessed and all this, but I think there's a component of evil and demonic activity that happens in this kind of conflicts and happens that we can't see. And so it just kind of reminded me, it's like, man, I need to be praying for just the people, praying that God would just help overthrow this kind of evil attack. Because it's an attack not just on the Ukrainian people, but I think this is the broader question. It seems to be an attack on democracy. There's something about Russia and the way they do stuff, because Ukraine really it was set up as a democracy, and I think that's a big question, a big narrative. But speaking of leadership, let's just transition. I would love to talk a little bit of leadership stuff, because you and I both are living in those circles. There are people who are watching this, listening to, who probably operate in. I mean, I think all of us. I mean, you become a parent, you're a leader. You work as a manager, you run a business, you're a leader, and I think leadership is kind of leadership. And so I'd love to, obviously there's not that many. What's funny? I run around a lot of ministry circles, and I don't run into a whole lot of pastors who are church planners. You and I are both church planners. Most of the people, when I go to different things, I find out most of them ended up like they went and took over a church, or they did this. Someone invited them. I shouldn't say take over. That's probably bad in the context we were just talking about. I'm just saying they step in and they get hired in. They hired in, but they didn't start something. And so I feel like if I know this correctly about your story, you moved down from Cleveland area, or were you at Cedar Creek?
No, I was in Toledo.
Okay,
yeah,
Toledo.
But I was at a church called Calvary.
Yeah. Okay. And so you came down to Columbus to start this church. When did you start one church?
We started January of
2011.
Yeah.
So you over 10 years, 11 years.
11
just celebrated
years,
11 years.
I did a year just working locally.
So you worked, if I remember your story, you worked at a gym.
Yeah.
Everybody you ran into, you're like, you ought to be part of a church, dude.
Pretty much.
What a great way to start a church. I love it, because when we started this church, we had no clue what we were doing, and it was really rough.
I just went and made friends. I went and
Yeah.
made friends.
That's
and
cool.
went to an environment I like being in. I enjoy exercise. It was one of those gyms. I mean, they had basketball courts and, a running track and whatever. So I was there. I was just making friends and then inviting people to come visit. That was what I'd say. Because I didn't want them to feel like, they would. It was the Hotel California or whatever. You come in, you can never leave.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, come visit. We'll save you a seat. And that was kind of how we started it.
So you got started. So your family moved down here. Did you have anybody with you that moved down, or was it just you?
Yeah, I had a friend that moved across the country, and then another guy who actually met at a church planting boot camp. They called it boot camp, but it was like a training event.
Okay.
So two different guys. Who have actually since gone and planted other churches.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, no, we had some help, and then, but most of our team was just people we met
here
organically.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so you built that, and you started January of 11 doing that. And is that when you were meeting in the school? Did you start then in the school? That was probably
we were at charter school. Yeah.
Charter school for a while, and so over the last 11 years, I mean, your church has grown significantly, and so. You then went multi-site, and we had talked about that, and you had another location. So So speaking of like leadership, and you had to make some hard decisions during the last couple of years. I think all of us have. If you're in leadership, you had to make hard decisions.
Yep.
Things that sometimes weren't popular, and so if you don't mind me asking, like you made a decision, and the reason why I can connect with this is because we had to make the same decision to shut down one of our locations during the pandemic. That was not on our radar to do that leading into the pandemic. My guess is the same thing with you, right?
Oh, for sure. We going into the pandemic, our whole plan was keep adding sites. Because I think the simple logic at that time was, if you want to reach a community, you have to put a physical expression in that community. It's like Kroger or whatever, right? Like, you're not driving across the city to go to Kroger. They better put one in your backyard. It's got to be convenient. So they're finding like, certain like sort of OG Christians might be willing to drive 30 minutes, but most people won't, So they, there's all that math. And then the idea of being able to do that and the viability of satellite and all of that. So that was our plan. And actually in the middle of COVID and even sort of coming back from COVID, I thought we might buy up buildings.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking a lot of churches are probably going to shut down during COVID. And instead of those becoming something else, what if we go buy them?
I think they still will.
Huh?
I think you're still going to see it.
See what?
Churches shutting down.
Oh, for
in buildings.
sure.
I think you're going to see it more and more in the next few years.
Oh, no question.
I really do.
Yeah, so it is happening.
I don't think it's a bad. I'm saying what I'm saying. I don't think that was a bad thought or strategy,
no.
and it's not something that we want.
No.
But it's a reality.
Yeah.
Not just. I think it's not. I think, one of the things they've been talking about is like, they're calling it the Great Resignation. It's not just from work in the secular place, marketplace, but it's also happening in ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're estimating the amount of people to leave the ministry, to retire, to step out of it over the next 5 years is staggering.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of pastors are like, I'm trying to get through this. When they get through it, they're going to be like, I'm done.
Dude, my heart goes out because honestly, our church did really great during COVID. Like, really great. And I'm whooped.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like, I'm going like, if we had just been getting our teeth kicked in that whole time, I'm going like,
why?
What would you have left? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I was thinking maybe this is where we really double down on multi-site and we go buy 2 or 3 buildings and launch 2 or 3 campuses. But I think whenever you're making big decisions, especially when you're having, you step back and you fly up to 10,000 feet and you look at everything and have discipline to do it. You know what I mean? I think that's probably a big shift as I've aged as a leader. When I was young, I sort of probably had too much confidence in my gut. Thought I had like the golden gut, and like if it's in my gut, it's got to be God.
If I had this idea, I'd run after it.
It's got to be.
Got to be.
And I would become really decisive and fixated. And I've learned over time to be more disciplined and to include more voices and be a little better listener. So we went through a process of really stepping back, looking at the landscape, engaged some people within our, some of our leaders, and to really walk through like, what is the vision of our church? What is God saying to us? So we really took about the first 9 months of 21 to really look at that. And within that, we came up with what we think were some conclusions that we all sort of came to together. And the first was, you got to kind of start with self-awareness. And you go, what do we do? What are we great at?
Yeah.
What is working that like actually, we could have some opportunity cost if we don't seize it. So we started finding like actually our digital expression, we were doing it really well without focusing on it. Yeah. And so I could go on and on about how we came to those conclusions. But the bottom line is we feel like we're really, that's an area that God's gifted us, that we're able to do well. Then you're doing like even just the numbers, right? The head brain stuff. Like, okay, what does it cost to run the second location? In terms of, are we losing money? Are we making money? Let's actually really look at the analytics. What's it doing in terms of the focus of our staff? Yeah. Are we good with systems? And we would look and we're like, we're not bad with systems, but I'm not like a great systems leader. Like I can whiteboard. Like I imagine, really good.
I imagine Craig Gershell is an incredible systems leader.
He's going to do fine.
And he's created a stamp model. Yeah. Plant, and it's everything's systems.
Chris Hodges.
Yes.
These guys are going to be fine, right? Yeah. But I look at us, we are moderately good to not really good at it. So things like, the way I describe it is like, well, how do you assess if you're good at it? Okay, I'm like this. You have a baby, your baby's really high maintenance, you're doing everything for it, but over a few years, your baby starts wiping itself. It turns into it's growing up. It's becoming less high maintenance in a sense. Right. It can get itself ready for school. It can make its own breakfast. It can whatever. Ours wasn't doing that. So it's like problems were staying problems. We weren't becoming simpler. Despite our best efforts, it's not our forte. Yeah. And so I think to get in and go, hey, we're not so urgent. It's not like we're bleeding money. And it's like, oh, we can't do this anymore. But I think if you wait until the decision is a no-brainer, you've waited too long. Yeah. So I think that's the difference between good leadership and great leadership is the anticipation of going, you know what, we're going to have the discipline to do this before it's like a big problem or before we have to. So the more we did that, we said, hey, this is what we do well. Let's do that well. Yeah. Let's simplify our entity. Let's also even kind of reading the tea leaves among our leaders and team in terms of their energy. Yeah. Right. Not to get preachy, but you think back in 1 Kings, like Rehoboam, right? And the people come to him like, dude, we're tired. Yeah. We're really tired. If you like take a load off us, we'll be really awesome forever. We'll like, love you forever.
You think my dad was bad. I got more in my pinky than, it's like.
Yeah. And so you're like, dude didn't read the tea leaves. Yeah. And like
listen
everyone
to
left.
the wrong advice.
Everyone left.
Yeah, lost it.
So you're like, at a certain point, like even if you're you know, if you have a bias toward big things and action, like at time you have to kind of go, what's up? Like what's best for us today?
Yeah.
So what we're doing is really for the next 3 to 5 years, getting very simple.
Yeah.
We're going to do our weekend service in Gahanna. We're really focusing on digital duplication. Basically everything we do in terms of church, serving the church, we can do digitally as well. And we can do it better than we're doing it now if we focus on it. So by removing that plate we were spinning, we focused our team, let them recuperate their emotional energy, let them have healthy rhythms.
Yeah.
And at the same time, open ourselves up to things like what we're doing now, right? Making other types of content, have the bandwidth for that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying we'll never re-enter multi-site.
Right.
I don't know, but I kind of like to learn on someone else's dime, to be honest. I kind of like to watch what someone else, because here's my hunch, actually.
know.
Here's my hunch. And again, don't, this isn't a prophecy.
No, this
isn't a prophecy.
No, we're
but
marking
this
it
is my
down.
hunch. Okay, this
All
is my-
right, mark this down.
I think live streaming might leapfrog satellites. So, for example, live streaming is so good. Your guys' live stream is so good.
I don't know about that, but
If
yes, I
I'm,
appreciate
it is. If I'm going to watch it digitally, am I going to put my makeup on, get my baby together,
Right.
drive across town, do all this, or am I going to watch it in my house where it's highly convenient?
Yeah.
On my TV, I can put it up.
Sure.
Everyone can do that now. Being honest, before COVID, I didn't know how to put YouTube on my television. That was embarrassing. I'm bad with that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody can do it now. So to go, digital is viable.
Yeah.
My question is, why would I physically go to a building for a digital experience when the one at home is so good? The only answer I can think of is because community's so great.
Well, I was going to say,
systems are so good.
but I don't. So let's challenge that for a little bit. It's good to talk about because we've been in that same headspace as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the things that you just said, we walked through our situation a little bit different in the fact that we were opening this facility, moving out of another one that we had our last Sunday and then we never went back to that building. It was never even planned, to go that way. And when we were looking at coming back from, trying to start back from COVID, knowing the climate, what it was like there's no way we can handle 2 locations with the staff, with the bands, how many people are gone? How many people are here? We were just like, there's no way we can do it. It's going to stretch us way too thin. So then we made that. Plus, we had this space that we were walking into. It was huge, and we're like, we got to fill it. We got to figure out how to, operate. So we made that same decision. And honestly, it was a hard decision to make, very hard, because I knew how many people it would disappoint. I knew how many people would be like, this was my church, my community, my campus. You just took it away.
My church away.
Yeah, and I knew that, but we as the church in general are a million times healthier than we were even going through the rest of the pandemic. That our staff, like you said, the complexity, our staff realignment, things got really simple. It's been a blast having everybody back together on Sundays. I didn't realize how much I miss that, having everybody here versus we're all, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's I am having a lot of fun, and I'm not saying I'm not saying we wouldn't do multi-site again, but I'm going to do it from a place of strength. I'm going to do it from a place of that. But I want to just kind of push in real quick on the digital thing. I kind of agree. We did the same thing. We were like, let's lean into digital. We still have been trying to do that, trying to figure out, okay, if we offer this at the church and this at the church. So we even started creating some discipleship stuff, some labs, and our primary vehicle was doing it on video first, even for people within our local community, going, hey, we want to make this available to anybody. So we're going down that direction as well. But at the same time, I also feel like I just don't know we can ever get away from spaces. Here's something. It's the first people that we had, I don't know if you had this, the first people that came back after kind of COVID over the last year, families with kids. If you're a parent, Sunday morning, you got a bunch of kids, Sunday morning is not, it's hard to focus. You got kids there, you know what I mean? I feel like that's always going to be a challenge. I think community is a big one. One of the things that we're seeing, I don't know if you guys are seeing this, is as of late, we're seeing it's never been, I want to say easier, that sounds terrible, to get people to step into things to connect. We used to try before, and now it's hey, new season, if you want to join a circle, small group, hey, go there. 50 people are showing up going, yeah, we want to join. It's all these people. So I think that It'd be interesting to see how this plays out. Our digital is, I think, still reaching people, and it's there.
I think this, yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
agree
so in all those
wholeheartedly.
things, I just don't know that buildings will ever go away as long as parents are having kids, because I think there's a lot of parents that don't feel adequate. When we want to help them, they don't feel adequate with their kids when it comes to spiritual stuff. I really do. And, and so where do you think that fits into this? Obviously, you guys are still doing brick and mortar. You have the location. So it's not, I know you're not saying that, but how do you see that need playing out with what you're trying to do digitally?
Yeah, so I think for us personally, okay, I think, well, let me say this. I think everything you're saying is correct. Like, I think people, are opening up again to, definitely wanting to be social. I think it's actually seems to be a bit easier now than it was before and all of that.
Yeah.
I think for us, our ability to duplicate ourselves to another location remotely, we aren't good at that yet. Our systems being a well-oiled machine, I could give you examples of just things that stayed broken that then cost us in terms of what that does to the culture and the community and all of that.
I understand.
So I think if a church is great at that and they're able to really stamp that really well, which maybe we can get there.
Yeah.
We're just not there yet.
Yeah.
If we do get there, and if that is something that people go, yeah, I'll drive there for this, okay. I think the other thing too is the models can change. And I think you're going to see that more. I think you're going to see like a multi-site church that maybe was all digital. Okay, and I'm not talking about Life Church and Highlands.
Yeah, I
and
understand.
these guys are freaks.
Yeah,
okay, in a good way.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is the ones like us, I think the multi-site model might lend itself to in-person communicators more than the digital, because you go, yeah, we need brick and mortar, and or we need to connect, but like we connect at each other's house, or we can connect in other locations. That even as a church, I have to look myself in the mirror and go, what does it physically cost to run that building?
Yeah.
Is what it's accomplishing, is the draw there financially, economically
And how many people
viable?
did you have to go help do that could be here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, we sent
You're
100.
saying-
We
that's-
sent 100 people.
That's what I mean.
And again, what it's just it is a bit of
They're
on
great
the business
questions.
side of the church.
Yeah.
It's I think the high quality live streaming. I think people. I'm not saying no one would want to go to a brick and mortar satellite.
Sure.
Because I think some would.
Yeah.
But I think these other, like, everyone's investing in that infrastructure right now because of, dude, we're talking about Ukraine. 2 weeks ago when it all went down, or a few weeks ago when it all went down, we had people in Ukraine in our live stream going, we're here from Ukraine.
Yeah.
So you're going like how viable that is, how accessible it is.
Incredible tool.
You can forget you're in your living room, you think you're at church.
Yeah.
So to go, is that the most financially responsible way for us to, to do, is to go buy up millions and millions of dollars of buildings? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm still curious.
Yeah.
But I kind of want.
I love what you're saying though, and I love to get into that space and talk again. People may not care as much about that, but I mean that's. I think it's our world.
I think the difference between you and I, too, or I could be wrong on this. At least my perception, you are a better leader than me. That's my opinion. You are a better leader than me. Like your understanding of like strategy, tactical systems, like those type of things.
I'm system minded,
dude.
Naturally,
I'm not really.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy a 2 or 3 hour meeting about strategy, vision, multi-site to come out and go, hey, we're gonna go. Here's how we're gonna circle the city. That's not. I can do it.
Yeah.
I can go there. If I apply my brain, I have to fight to stay engaged. To be honest with you, I would rather be in a 3 hour meeting about John 10. Personally,
there you go.
100%.
Yeah.
How do we tilt the prism on John 10?
Yeah.
Turn present a piece of art to folks. So for me, within that, like, I have to be honest about how God has made me.
Yeah.
And not that that's a reason to shirk responsibility,
No.
but like to go, my passions, like what's going to keep me in it for the long haul is knowing my gifts and staying in those. And then I certainly don't want to underachieve in terms of how many people we reach, but at the same time going, the way that I lead and the way even that I present isn't great with system. Like they
Yeah.
always want all my stuff 2 weeks out.
Yeah, I don't like doing that either though. I'm with
like,
you. I'm like
Saturday, I'm changing everything.
I don't know Saturday. I'm a little bit better than that, but only
Oh,
because
dude.
I have to because I force. But I'm also that like I'm that week.
Yeah.
Like I'm the week of. I mean, we'll do stuff out there, but like I'm preparing. It's like, and I'm terrible at that. Hey, 2-3 weeks out, yeah, I got my outline, and I don't have that stuff.
I'll blow it up on a Saturday.
So that's why,
and I'm preach that night.
that's why we don't. Yeah, I don't have a problem. That's why we don't hand out an outline.
Yeah. Oh, dude,
I don't hand out an
I'm like,
outline.
sorry.
They've done it before. I'm like,
Nah.
yeah, man, I don't. I might be done Thursday. I've got, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So
you can hand it out next week for the one I did this week.
But I love what you're saying because I think there's hold on. I think there's something actually really beautiful in what you're saying. And let's just kind of we'll finish on this. How about this today? I think one of the greatest things that we can do is have an incredible self-awareness of our gifting and in our arena, let me say what we feel is a calling, right? And if I think all of us, we share the same thing, and that is we want to reach people with the good news of Jesus. That's our calling. Our God, you know, we all have the gospel. And I think every Christ follower should have that same one too. Though we have a calling, we feel like the vocational ministry to lead it. But here's the thing: if you look like me, we're not reaching the people that we're reaching. If I look like you, I don't look like Craig or Shell. It's like I don't want to do the Life Church thing. I don't. In fact, I'm so enjoying for a season, who knows how long, not the headache. Multi-site was a headache. It's not even pulling off there, but everything behind the scenes. Not you can do it on Sunday, but it was really challenging when you're dealing with the technology, when you're dealing with the staff structure, when you're dealing with dotted lines. So all these things that go into managing it. Really complicated, complex. And so I'm enjoying the simplicity, and I feel like in this season, I'm getting rewired as well. I don't know if you feel that way, but I feel like
100%.
I'm getting rewired. The things that I'm seeing as valuable, it's this Isaiah 54. It's like, I want to stretch the tent, enlarge the tent, but I also want to drive the stakes deep. And one of the things that I think I saw this coming out of the pandemic was the moment we don't have a building and a space where people were coming, then I think there was a real question is, what was the quality, how good are we at really creating disciples who feel like they can handle these kind of moments, and they wouldn't necessarily need this in order to continue to connect with people. And I got to be honest, it's like I'm putting a mirror in front of us and go, not good. Yeah. Not good. Yeah. And so we did the same thing. I think so this is the blessing of an unplanned, like having to mitigate in the middle of this and close this, and it's painful and it's hard. The blessing for us has been to recircling the wagon and kind of going, what are we really going to be about? Yep. And I'm with you. I'm not closing the door that we won't go multi-site again or do what it would look like, but it might look different. I mean, there's the model we did, it could be like what you're saying, it could be more franchise-based, it could be this, it's church, who knows what it's going to look like. And I don't think we have to have the answer, but I love what you said about you need to follow the passion, the gifting that God's put in you. You are, what I would say that I've seen in you is that you're incredibly relational, far more than I am. I have to struggle to, I'm relational, but I'm not like you're on another scale. Like you just are, I've just seen that ooze out of you. Like when you're around people, hey bros, come on, we're together with this. You know what I mean? Like and I think it's beautiful, and it's like something that I feel like in this process, I'm growing in that, like how to be far more just present in the moment. And so I think you have to leverage who you are for the kingdom of God and not try to be anybody else. And I think it's hard. I think one of the things that's been, can I just say something that's been really helpful for me in this season is I got off social media a little over a year ago. I mean, I have a team, which is nice. I got, a social media director that kind of manages my account. So we post stuff, and I personally haven't been on. So you know what it's done for me is that I have no idea what other churches are doing. I have no clue. Unless somebody tells me or whatever, it's like, I don't know what Life Church, I don't know what Voodoo, I don't know. I have no clue what other people are doing. The beauty of that, I mean, I feel like I'm out of the loop. I don't care. The beauty of that is all I'm doing is looking at what has God called me to do, and I'm just trying to follow that. Yeah. And I think it's so hard because we've been social media has made it so that we're always like comparing what we do and what we have and what we're doing with somebody else, and if they're doing that, then maybe we should be doing that. And it's like, maybe not. Yeah. Maybe I'm not wired for that.
Yep.
And I find the most joy doing what what God wired me to do.
Yep.
So I think there's incredible wisdom in that.
Yeah.
So I just applaud you for, I think the way you've led through the last couple of years to me I think it's brilliant.
Thank you, dude. I'll tell you one of the things that, I've really tried to wrestle through and sit in the tension as I'm asking the Lord to search me and search my heart and help me to, ultimately serve his people well, is trying to distinguish between what is my personality wiring and what is God really leading. So, for example, I have personality wirings, as do you, in terms of a bias toward action or boldness. And actually, what can actually be the catalyst or the driving force to bold action for me, if I'm being self-aware and digging, sometimes is fear.
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid. I'm afraid, like, oh, what if we don't do this? We're going to get left behind. Oh, what if we don't? People are going to get bored. Oh, what if I? So it's an anxiety or fear that's driving something that I can absolutely have both self-deception and public deception and calling it faith because it's bold, when it might actually be more of a personality trait. For me, it takes more faith to throttle down. It takes more faith to rest.
That's good.
I didn't rest for years because I didn't have enough faith to. For years.
Because you're trying to carry it. You're trying
because I think it's all dependent on
you.
me.
Yeah.
And so going to downshift or to close a campus,
I'm with you. That
takes massive faith because it is like, I boxed at one point.
Yep.
Took,
there's so many things I would love to talk about.
It took me 6 months to learn to go backwards because I always thought I had to be coming forward. But that's not boxing. That's a bull in a china shop, right? A bull in there just knocking junk over. At a certain point, the greatest boxers know how to give ground. So
Mayweather, the greatest defensive,
ground.
He doesn't throw half the
Undefeated,
time.
Never lost.
I know.
He never lost a battle. Okay, so he's
like
giving ground. So like to know the difference between, dude, this is actually a dysfunctional expression of a God-given gift.
That's good, dude.
To know the difference between that and what is actually faith.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm just asking God daily, like, Lord, show me the difference because all I want to do is follow you. That's all I want to do is be obedient to you. And if that means I got to come over here and do this, then I will. And yet it's sometimes hard to know the difference.
Yeah. I love it, dude. Man, thank you for coming on here today. I
Thanks
really
for
have.
having me.
We don't even get to talk enough, so if I use this as an excuse, I love to hear your heart. Like, I just think you just dropped some vulnerability and some wisdom. And so I think for anybody that's kind of watching this, listening to this, I think there's so many takeaways from everything you said, which I think what you said at the end I love so much, which is maybe the greatest step of faith that you will take might not be what you go accomplish or achieve or what you think it is, but it might be what you say no to. It might be what you cut out of your life. It might be what you let go of. Like that, I think, is rich.
Thank you.
I think that's gold. And so, hey, thank you so much, obviously, Greg, for joining us. How can people connect if they want to hear more from you? I don't care if it's our church, any of that. What's the best way they can follow you or your church?
So my handle is Gregory A. Ford.
Gregory A.
And then our church is just spelled out one.church.
One.church. That's the URL. And so maybe go give Greg a follow. I just think you have incredible content. I love it. I love you. I'm praying for you all the time, man.
Thank you.
And hey, thank you all for joining us today for this episode. If you have any comments or questions or as always, any emails, you can send them to podcast@thex.church. We love for you to always rate, review, subscribe. You're crazy, dude. For those who are listening and not watching, Greg is trying to make puppet faces through the camera lens. Anyways, hey, thank you for sticking with us today. Love you. We'll catch you next week.